Let's talk about the 3070. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button on my channel. I'm just getting this technology-focused YouTube channel started, and hitting buttons like that help me rise in the YouTube search algorithm. Thank you. Let's talk about the 3070. So first of all, let's get out all the information we know about it, and then use that to compare it with the competitors. Should you wait? Should you buy one on launch? What do we think? So let's take a look with performance first. The first thing I have for you here is from Tom's Hardware. They're reporting that there are some Geekbench scores leaked for the 3070. We have a 350,000 to almost 360,000 performance on the 3070, and the 2080 Ti normally runs in the 345 to 355 range, and without getting hung up on what do all these numbers mean, is lower even better than higher, or whatever, all that matters is how does it compare to the 2080 Ti? Well, pretty similar. That's what matters. And then jumping over, we're going to see that that's also the case in a whole bunch of other situations. So Video Cards has apparently got some results from a 3070 running the 3D Mark benchmarks, and again is reporting scores that are pretty well in line with the 2080 Ti. And then what else do we have? We've got some Ashes of the Singularity performance leaked out online. And what do you know? It's pretty much in line with the 2080 Ti. At the lower 1080p resolution, it's slightly beating the 2080 Ti by like 1%, or 2% if we stretch it to the ultra-wide 1080p. And then if we jump up to 4K, we notice it losing by about 1.4%. So what does that mean? It means a couple of things. The main thing it means is that a 1 or 2% difference is not something you'll actually notice when playing games. So it basically performs equal to a 2080 Ti in the games and benchmarks that we've seen leak out. And if it does perform slightly worse, it might be at the 4K resolution. And that could be explained by its lower amount of VRAM, of video memory, as well as its lower video memory bandwidth. But I don't want us to get too hung up on that because the actual performance is so close you wouldn't really notice the difference. And well, that brings us to other things that we can compare. So NVIDIA has already released their performance numbers, which were taken at 1440p in a variety of games and benchmarks. And again, it's from NVIDIA, so we have to, the famous YouTube, take it with a grain of salt. But, I mean, that's true. You got to wait for independent benchmarks. But the kinds of numbers that NVIDIA tends to feed out aren't usually completely garbage. They tend to be fairly in line with what we will actually see from reviews. And what does that get us? Well, Video Cards has taken NVIDIA's chart, which showed bar graphs for various games, and have instead given us direct performance as a percentage or ratio comparing the different cards that NVIDIA released. So their comparison was from the 2070, the 3070, and the 2080 Ti. This is particularly interesting to me because I have a 2070. That's my current card. So that helps me, but you might not be in the same situation. Anyway, so a 2080 Ti compared to, well, let's not compare it to a 2070. We want to compare it to a 3070. So compared to the 3070, in our various performances, we have the 3070 on top here. So a better than 100% means the percent above the 2080 Ti's performance in that particular game or application. So we got an 8%, 2%, 22%. Notice that that's Blender, that's not a game. So Blender is testing its rendering performance. So it looks like if rendering's a big deal to you, the 3070 might be especially a good deal compared to a 2080 Ti, which, by the way, we'll compare this to other things too. It's just we're trying to establish that it's basically a 2080 Ti in games. So Borderlands 3, it loses by 2%. Control with RTX on. By the way, RTX on in NVIDIA benchmarks, their release specs does include DLSS, so bear that in mind. Anyway, that's a 1% drop off, but then Doom Eternal, we're seeing the 8% better. Luxmark, so again, getting to a synthetic benchmark, a 23%, so again, that's not an actual game. Minecraft RTX, so this, we're seeing the 5% gain. and blah, 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 blah. So what we're seeing here is overall, if you average those out, it's 108%, but notice that its biggest performance gains compared to the 2080 Ti were in synthetic benchmarking or the Blender render rather than in gaming. So if your primary focus, like me, is gaming, it's maybe even less than an 8% gain over the 2080 Ti, and there are games where it specifically does do slightly worse than the 2080 Ti. Now, interesting to me, more so than you, is how the 3070 compares to the 2070, because I have a 2070. So this is telling me what kind of performance I would see directly to the card I have now. I don't want to dwell here because, again, I have a 2070, you don't, but looks like I'd be seeing something like a 68% jump in performance over my current card if I choose to upgrade, and that sounds good. Anyway, so that's comparing directly to the 2080 Ti. Let's also kind of pop up this chart, which gives us more actual specifications. Now we're comparing it across the RTX lineup. We're seeing that, once again, the main differences, if we compare the 2080 Ti to the 3070, is in the video memory, where we've got the 8 gigabytes compared to 11 gigabytes. And again, it drops down with a smaller bus and does get us the smaller total bandwidth compared to the 2080 Ti. And that's, again, could be impacting its performance at like higher resolutions like 4K, and that might be where we get that small drop-off in some titles. Now, could also try to get a 3080, right? So if we compare to that, specs-wise, the 3080 is much stronger, but also, again, costs $700 compared to $500. You got a $200 jump. So I think the 3070 is going to deliver a better value ratio. But so in a sense, you're getting what you can pay for, and we all know that the 3090, you're buying that if you want the very best and you don't care what you pay for, and we don't really need to talk about that. Okay, but where's our performance now compared to AMD? Well, we've seen AMD releasing their performance numbers at their Zen 3 launch, and we're not sure if that performance number is for their highest end card or their step down. So that's like the 6900 versus the 6800. But either way, we saw in general that it fell short of a 3080, but was significantly above a 2080 Ti. So if the 3070 is in line with a 2080 Ti, basically, then it's looking like AMD will have a card that falls between the 3070 and the 3080. And then the question is, will they also have a card above that that's maybe between the 3080 and the 3090, which would be very interesting. Again, comparing to AMD cards, I've got a video I released yesterday talking about that, which you could check out. The biggest thing I saw was that those cards had 16 gigabytes of video memory. And that is not only just dominating and doubling the 3070, but it's much better than the 3080 as well. And I know that's a concern for some people with the 3080, is just having that 10 gigabyte video memory. And I've also seen some rumors, and these are just rumors, that are, while we had seen a plan for a 20 gigabyte 3080 to come out, I believe those plans are at least rumored to have been scrapped. So, but they're rumoring instead a switch down to 7 nanometer versions of the 30 series cards rather than the 8 nanometer Samsung process. Now, I don't want to get too hung up in all of that. It does impact the next thing I want to talk about, which is, should you wait or should you try to buy a 3070 on launch day? Okay, one thing to consider is with computers in general, you always can get trapped in a cycle of just wait. There's something better coming out. If you just wait, you can get better performance per dollar. Just wait a little bit. This next thing's coming out, or we'll hear news about this. That's not wrong. It's always true. In computers, you will get better performance per dollar if you wait. But I mean, that would have been true decades ago, and you could still be waiting, and you've never bought your computer because you know if you just wait, you can get something better for the same price. So I don't think it's always correct to just wait. However, There are times when it is definitely wrong to buy instead of waiting. So, for example, if you bought the 2080 Ti right before the 30 series was revealed, then you suddenly devalued your card by like half. Am I expecting there to be some craziness happening from AMD or from NVIDIA that would make buying a 3070 for $500 on launch a really bad decision that you're going to horribly, horribly regret? And I would say, no, I don't think that will happen. I think it is possible that we'll see a quick refresh of the 30 series from NVIDIA, possibly throwing in Supers or TIs, or just a 7-nanometer version of the same cards that offer that maybe have better production so they can actually get supply out and maybe actually do offer better performance because they're on that 7-nanometer die. I think stuff like that is very realistic and could happen within the next several months. I think it's also possible, like I said, that AMD is going to be bringing a card that can beat the 3070 handily, although we don't know how to compare in things like ray tracing. I think that's very possible, and we also don't know the price they'll release at. I mean, if they come in with something that just clearly beats the 3070 for $500, would you regret buying the 3070 for $500? Well, I don't think you necessarily should regret that. And that's why I want to say that if you want to buy a 3070 on launch day, because you know that it's probably going to sell out in seconds, should you feel bad about that? Well, again, it's this fear of missing out, right? You're always like, I could wait. I'm going to miss out on a better deal. I'm going to miss out on a better deal. Just like relax, right? The 3070 is going to be a good deal, and you're going to get very good performance. Any game that's out right now that you want to play, the 3070 can do a very good job on that game, and it's doing it for $500. So if $500 is a reasonable amount of money to you to spend on a graphics card, and you're going to get performance that you should be really happy with, I don't think you need to feel bad about sitting there on launch day trying to get that card. Now, again, as I said, it's always true that if you wait, you might get better deals. So if you want to wait another few months, actually, we should probably see supply start to settle down. We'll have a much better idea of how does AMD and NVIDIA, how do they actually line up with each other performance-wise, as well as we'll start to get more confirmation on what NVIDIA plans to do next. Because we know that they're definitely not just going to sit on these 3 cards. I mean, we know the 3060 will come out as well, but we know they're not just going to sit on these and do nothing. Because like with the 20 series, they very quickly did release the super variants, which then displaced at the same price point the original ones. And like I said, I think we're going to see something like that happening. So what do you have right now? If you're just struggling on a really old GPU, and you just need to get something, grab one of these if you can get it, because you're going to be happy with the performance. And yeah, maybe something will come out better, but whatever. You're going to be happy with the performance in the games. If you just play your game, you're going to be happy with the performance, and that's a good price, especially compared to what we were getting in the last gen. If you haven't built a computer at all, you're planning your first build, I think, again, nothing wrong with you don't have anything to use right now, so just waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting might not be the best idea for you. Buy a 3070 at launch if you can get one. And you might not get one, but if you do, you'll be happy. You can continue on with your build. However, if you're sitting there like I am on a 2070, which, plays games pretty well. I can't get I just tried out Outer Worlds for the first time last night, and I play on a 3440 by 1440 monitor, so that's ultra-wide 1440p. It's not quite 4K, but it's a lot of pixels to push. My 2070 is struggling there. I tried out Outer Worlds. I wanted to just press Ultra and be happy, but I was dropping below 60 frames on a pretty consistent basis in that game. And so, and that's happened to me in a number of games lately. So I've got performance that I can live with a while longer. I'm not on something ancient, but I definitely want to step it up to at least 3070 levels of performance. Which brings up another point. Consider your current power supply unit, because if 320 watts or 350 watts is not something that your power supply unit is going to deliver, I really think the 3070 is the way to go, and you absolutely should be trying to buy one right now. And the reason is we've got pretty pretty confidently accurate information on AMD's cards now. Again, I had a video about this yesterday you could look at. And it's looking like their board power is going to be in that 320 watt range on their cards that'll be competing at this level. And think about that again, compared to like people who bought cards last gen. I bought a 2070. Look at that, 175 watts. Whereas the reference 3080 is 320. That's where AMD's big Navi stuff is going to be, also at 320. And then the board partner versions that push things a little bit, could be more in the 350 to 355 range. And I don't know if my power supply can actually handle doubling my GPU power like that. I have a 650 watt power supply. I think I'm borderline. I might be able to get away with it, I might not, and I'm gonna have to really look into the details on that. Whereas I'm confident I could drop in a 3070 to my current system without issues. So that's a big thing to consider. It's looking like power supply wise, if that's going to be a constraint for you and you don't want to buy a new power supply just for your GPU upgrade, which is adding to the cost, and like upgrading a power supply to me is the most annoying possible thing to do to upgrade in my system. The 3070 becomes more and more tempting. I had really been hoping that AMD was going to be closer to this 220 watt range rather than that 320 watt range, but it's not looking like that's going to be the case on their higher end cards. So that's where I come down with this. I think there's no situation where buying a 3070 at launch is stupid. I think there are situations where waiting longer does make sense for you if you're happy-ish with your current performance and you want to see how everything plays out. But if you need something now, or you have limited power supply capabilities and you don't want to mess around with that, grabbing the 3070 definitely makes a lot of sense. All right, that's my thoughts on the situation. What are your thoughts, guys? Let me know in the comments. And again, if you made it to the end of the video, you should probably subscribe to my channel and definitely hit the like button. Thank you. Have an excellent day.